The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its curved walls displaying the swirling nebulae of distant star systems. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated atmospheric pods, each environment carefully calibrated to support their unique biology. The air hummed with translation matrices, converting thousands of different communication methods into a universal understanding. Ambassador Zethkar of the Helian Empire adjusted his secondary breathing apparatus and reviewed the day's agenda on his bioscreen. Another routine session discussing trade routes, mining rights, and the endless bureaucracy that kept the galaxy's civilizations from destroying each other. The Helians had been part of the Council for over 2,000 years, long enough to see dozens of species rise to spacefaring status and request membership. Next item, announced the Council's AI moderator, its voice resonating through every pod simultaneously. Application for membership. Species designation humans from planet Earth. Sol system Orion Arm. A collective rustle moved through the chamber. New species always generated interest, though most followed predictable patterns. They would present their technological achievements, demonstrate their peaceful intentions, and undergo the standard evaluation process that typically took several decades. The human delegation entered through the main portal, and Zethkar leaned forward in his pod. These creatures were bipedal, remarkably similar to several other species in basic form, though they seemed unusually compact. No obvious defensive features, no natural weapons, no impressive size. Their skin appeared thin and vulnerable, and they moved with an odd combination of grace and barely contained energy. The lead human stepped forward to the central speaking platform. According to the preliminary files, this was Captain Sarah Chen, representing something called the United Nations of Earth. She wore a simple, dark uniform with minimal decoration, her black hair pulled back efficiently. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the translation matrix. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, I am Captain Sarah Chen, speaking for the human species. We come before you not just seeking membership, but offering partnership. We understand you may have questions about our qualifications and our intentions. Councillor Vexhai of the Trilarian Confederacy activated his communication node. His species had evolved from aquatic hunters, and his translator carried the bubbling undertones of his native speech. Captain Chen, our preliminary scans of your species show concerning patterns. Your homeworld appears to have experienced numerous global conflicts. Your history is marked by violence on a scale rarely seen among spacefaring civilizations. Chen nodded calmly. Councillor Vexhai, you're absolutely correct. Humans have fought wars throughout our history. We've made mistakes, caused suffering, and learned hard lessons. But we've also learned to overcome our differences when faced with greater challenges. Your species lacks the natural advantages we typically see in successful spacefaring races, observed Ambassador Quental of the Ethereal Collective, her crystalline form chiming softly as she spoke. No enhanced strength, no natural armor, no extended lifespans. How did you achieve interstellar travel with such limitations? The question that followed would later be remembered as the moment everything changed. Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several council members unconsciously adjust their positions. It wasn't malicious, but it carried an intensity that seemed to fill the vast chamber. Councillor Quental, I think there might be a misunderstanding about what constitutes a limitation, Chen replied. Yes, we're physically vulnerable compared to many species. A single claw swipe from a Cortharian could kill any human. A Matharian could crush our bones with casual pressure. But you're thinking about this the wrong way. She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the speaking platform. Images of Earth began cycling through, cities, landscapes, and most prominently, the diverse faces of humanity. We didn't develop interstellar travel despite our weaknesses. We developed it because of them. Every challenge our environment threw at us, we adapted. Not through evolution. We didn't have time for that. We adapted through intelligence, cooperation, and what we call stubborn refusal to quit. The display showed early human settlements in harsh environments, Arctic villages, desert cities, mountain communities. We lived in environments that should have killed us. When the ice ages came, we didn't hibernate or migrate to warmer worlds. We made fire, built shelters, and hunted creatures 10 times our size. Zethkar found himself paying closer attention than he had to any council presentation in decades. The human's voice carried a quality he couldn't quite identify. Not aggression exactly, but an absolute certainty that was both fascinating and unsettling. When diseases threatened to wipe us out, we didn't just build resistance, Chen continued. We studied the diseases themselves, learned how they worked, and turned our understanding into weapons against them. When we ran out of land, we built floating cities on our oceans. When we exhausted our planet's surface resources, we dug deeper than any species has ever dug. The images shifted to show human technological development, crude tools evolving into sophisticated machinery, simple boats becoming ocean-crossing vessels, primitive aircraft developing into spacecraft. And when we finally looked up at the stars, we didn't see distant lights, Chen said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. We saw destinations. She paused, letting that statement settle over the assembled representatives. Honored council members, you ask about our qualifications for membership. Let me share what we offer. A species that has never, in its entire history, encountered a problem it couldn't eventually solve. A species that has turned every disadvantage into an advantage, every weakness into strength. The holographic display now showed human space achievements, orbital stations, lunar colonies, the first interstellar probe that had brought them to council attention. We don't have natural weapons, Chen continued, so we built better ones. We don't have armor, so we designed protection that surpasses anything nature provided. We don't have extended lifespans, so we learned to accomplish more in our brief time than species with millennia to spare. The chamber was completely silent now, thousands of alien minds processing what they were hearing. This wasn't the usual peaceful overture they expected from potential members. This was something else entirely. We're not here to prove we're harmless, Chen concluded. We're here to prove we're worth having as allies. Because the truth is, counselors, you haven't seen what humans can really do yet. And honestly, we're hoping you never have to. The silence that followed her words stretched for nearly a full minute. Finally, the AI moderator spoke. The council will recess to consider this application. Captain Chen, please remain available for additional questioning. As the human delegation was escorted to temporary quarters, conversations erupted throughout the chamber, but one phrase seemed to echo in every discussion, translated into dozens of languages but carrying the same ominous weight. We're hoping you never have to. 3 days after the human presentation, the Galactic Council remained in heated debate. The crystalline halls echoed with arguments in dozens of languages as representatives struggled to categorize this new species. In the private chambers reserved for senior council members, Ambassador Zethkar found himself in an unexpected conversation with Councillor Vexhai and 2 other long-serving members. There's something about them that troubles me, Vexhai said, his aquatic form rippling with agitation in his specialized tank. Not their words, but the way they said them. I've been studying their historical records since the presentation. Elder Morden of the ancient keeper species nodded slowly. His people were among the oldest in the galaxy, having achieved spaceflight when most current civilizations were still crawling from primordial seas. I have lived through the integration of 34 species into this council. Never have I encountered such confidence from a species so recently emerged from their homeworld. The 4th member of their group, Advocate Lysandra of the Peaceful Unity, maintained her characteristic calm. Her species had evolved beyond physical forms centuries ago, existing as pure consciousness within quantum matrices. Perhaps their confidence comes from ignorance of galactic realities. They will learn humility when they understand the true scale of the universe. Zethkar activated a holographic display showing Earth's location. I've been reviewing their stellar neighborhood. They're not positioned near any major trade routes or strategic resources. Their system is relatively isolated, which might explain their unique development. Isolated, perhaps, Morden mused, but look at what they accomplished in that isolation. Their presenter mentioned turning every weakness into strength. I decided to examine this claim more thoroughly. The elder manipulated the display, bringing up detailed analyses of human history. They evolved on a world that should have killed them repeatedly. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic events. Each time their population was reduced to near extinction levels. Each time they not only survived but emerged stronger. Vexhai's translator carried notes of disbelief. That's impossible. No species survives multiple extinction-level events without evolutionary adaptation. That's what makes them remarkable, Morden continued. They survived through behavioral adaptation, not biological. When the ice came, they developed agriculture and food storage. When plague struck, they created medicine. When they faced predators stronger than themselves, they developed tools and tactics. The display shifted to show human warfare throughout history, battles, weapons, strategies evolving with frightening rapidity. But what truly concerns me is this. They never stopped fighting each other even as they overcame external threats. For most species, achieving global unity is a prerequisite for space travel. Humans reached space while still divided into competing factions. Lysandra's quantum form pulsed with curiosity. Perhaps their divisions made them stronger. Competition drives innovation. Competition, yes, Zethkar said slowly. But look at the scale of their competitions. They fought wars involving their entire planet. They developed weapons capable of destroying their own biosphere. And yet they developed safeguards to prevent their use. Vexhi's form darkened with concern. You're suggesting they learned restraint while maintaining capability? I'm suggesting, Zethkar replied, that we may have misunderstood what Captain Chen meant when she said we hadn't seen what humans could really do. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert from the Council's monitoring systems. All 4 ambassadors immediately accessed the incoming data stream, and what they found made them exchange alarmed glances across species barriers. Pirates, Vexhi stated flatly. The Ravager Collective has attacked the human diplomatic transport. The Ravager Collective was a well-known nuisance in the outer systems, a loose confederation of criminals and outcasts, who raided shipping lanes and occasionally harassed minor civilizations. They weren't considered a serious threat to Council members, more of an irritating reminder that not all spacefaring species chose civilization. The humans' escort ship was damaged, Morden reported, reviewing the sensor data. Their main vessel is intact but surrounded. Standard procedure would be to negotiate ransom or surrender valuable cargo. Lysandra accessed the live communications feed. The Ravagers are demanding the humans surrender their primitive trinkets and prepare for boarding. They seem to consider this an easy target. The 4 council members watched the tactical display as the human ships, small, ungainly vessels that seemed crude compared to the sleek Ravager craft, found themselves outnumbered 3-1. Standard diplomatic protocol required the Council to dispatch peacekeepers, but the nearest response fleet was 6 hours away. Should we warn the Ravagers they're attacking a diplomatic mission? Vexhi asked. Before anyone could answer, the communications array picked up a transmission from the human ships. Captain Chen's voice came through clearly, directed at the Ravager commander. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations Diplomatic Corps. You are interfering with a peaceful mission under galactic law. Please withdraw immediately. The Ravager response crackled with malicious laughter. Little primitives, you will surrender your technology and prepare for inspection. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessels. There was a pause before Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried a tone the council members had heard 3 days earlier. That unsettling certainty. Unknown Commander, I'm going to give you one more chance to withdraw. Not because we can't handle this situation, but because we're trying to make a good impression on the Galactic Council. Please don't make us regret that decision. Is she threatening them? Lysandra asked, her quantum form flickering with surprise. The Ravager commander's response came immediately. Your primitive vessels cannot match Ravager firepower. Surrender now or be destroyed. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists across the galaxy for decades to come. The human escort ship, previously classified as damaged, suddenly accelerated beyond anything the Council's sensors had thought possible. It didn't fire weapons. It didn't need to. The ship moved like a predator, using microbursts of thrust to position itself perfectly behind the lead Ravager vessel. Then, with surgical precision, it fired targeted beams that disabled engines, weapons, and life support systems without destroying the hull. Impossible, Morden whispered. That level of precision requires computational power beyond what their technology should allow. The second Ravager ship attempted to flee, but the human diplomatic vessel, supposedly a civilian transport, revealed weapon systems that appeared from concealed panels. These weren't the crude energy weapons typical of recently spacefaring species. These were sophisticated, efficient tools designed for specific purposes. Within minutes, all 3 Ravager vessels were disabled, their crews alive but completely helpless. The human ships hadn't sustained additional damage. Captain Chen's voice returned to the communications channel, and this time she was addressing the Council's monitoring station directly. Galactic Council Monitoring Station. This is Captain Chen. We've resolved the situation. The attacking vessels are disabled but intact. Crews unharmed. We're transmitting coordinates for pickup by your peacekeeping forces. Zethkar found his voice first. Captain Chen, how did you? Your ships appeared to be damaged. Ambassador Zethkar, we appreciate your concern. Our escort vessel sustained minor damage to non-essential systems. We never said we were helpless. The transmission ended, leaving the 4 council members staring at tactical displays that made no sense according to their understanding of human capabilities. They were playing, Vexhai said slowly. The entire time they were simply playing with the Ravagers. Mordun's ancient voice carried a note of something that might have been fear. No, they weren't playing. They were being polite. They disabled those ships without breaking a single galactic law regarding use of force. They could have destroyed them completely. Lysandra's quantum form pulsed rapidly. We need to reconsider this application very carefully. Zethkar nodded, but his attention was fixed on one detail from the engagement. The human weapons had fired with such precision that they disabled specific systems without affecting others. That level of control suggested not just advanced technology, but intimate knowledge of Ravager ship designs. How long? He asked quietly. Do you think humans have been watching us? The emergency session convened 12 hours after the Ravager incident. Representatives from every major species hurried to the council chambers, while security protocols activated throughout the station. For the first time in centuries, the council faced a situation they couldn't easily categorize. Captain Chen and her delegation sat in the central witness area. Apparently unaffected by the tension surrounding them, she reviewed a data pad with the same calm efficiency she'd shown during the original presentation, occasionally making notes with what appeared to be an actual physical writing instrument. Supreme Counselor Thexamon called the session to order. As the elected leader of the council, the ancient Vorthak commanded respect from every species present. His massive crystalline form towered over the assembly, and when he spoke, harmonic resonances carried his words directly into the consciousness of every listener. We are here to address unprecedented circumstances, Thexamon announced. A diplomatic mission has engaged in combat operations resulting in the capture of 3 vessels and 17 individuals. While no galactic laws were violated, this action raises serious questions about human capabilities and intentions. Counselor Vexhai activated his communication node. Supreme Counselor, with respect, I believe we're asking the wrong questions. The engagement wasn't the anomaly, the restraint was. Those ships could have been completely destroyed. Counselor Vexhai raises an important point, Elder Morden agreed. I've spent the last 12 hours analyzing the tactical data. Human weapons demonstrated capabilities that rival our most advanced military technology, yet they chose precision over destruction. Captain Chen requested permission to speak, and Thexamon granted it with a harmonic tone that translated as grudging curiosity. Honored council members, Chen began, standing with the same confident posture she'd maintained throughout their visit. I understand your concerns, but I think you're overcomplicating this situation. 3 ships attacked a diplomatic mission. We defended ourselves within the parameters of galactic law. End of story. The simplicity of her statement created a moment of stunned silence in the chamber. Finally, Ambassador Kreltoth of the warrior clan spoke up, his mechanical translator barely containing the growling undertones of his species' natural aggression. Captain Chen, the Ravager Collective has operated in these regions for over 50 years. They've defeated Council peacekeeping forces on multiple occasions. How does a recently spacefaring species neutralize them so easily? Chen tilted her head slightly, and several council members noticed the gesture carried an almost predatory quality. Ambassador Kreltoth, are you asking about our tactical methods or our technology? Both, Kreltoth replied immediately. I'm afraid that information is classified, Chen said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. However, I can share some general principles. First, we studied every engagement the Ravagers have had with Council forces. They follow predictable patterns. Second, we've been monitoring galactic communications for longer than you might expect. Third, we prepared for multiple contingencies before coming here. Advocate Lysandra's quantum form flickered with rapid calculations. Captain Chen, you speak of monitoring our communications. This implies surveillance capabilities across interstellar distances. Yes. The single-word answer sent ripples of shock through the assembly. Chen continued without apparent concern for the reaction she'd caused. We've been listening to galactic communications for approximately 80 of your standard years. We learned your languages, studied your cultures, and observed your political structures long before we made formal contact. The chamber erupted in dozens of different expressions of outrage, concern, and disbelief. Thexamon's harmonic tones called for order, but it took several minutes for the cacophony to subside. 80 years? Supreme Counselor Thexamon's voice carried harmonic overtones of deep concern. Your species achieved interstellar communication before achieving interstellar travel. Yes, Chen replied again. We built listening posts throughout our solar system and developed technologies to intercept and decode transmissions across vast distances. We wanted to understand what we were getting into before we introduced ourselves. Elder Morden leaned forward in his environmental pod. Captain Chen, this level of preparation suggests you view contact with galactic civilization as a potential threat. For the first time since entering the chamber, Chen's composed expression shifted slightly. When she spoke again, her voice carried an edge that made several council members unconsciously activate their personal defense systems. Elder Mordun, we view everything as a potential threat until proven otherwise. It's kept us alive for several 100,000 years. She gestured to the holographic display above the speaking platform, and images of Earth's history began cycling through again, but this time the focus was different. You see a peaceful diplomatic mission asking for membership in your council, Chen continued. But from our perspective, we're a small, isolated species, making contact with a galactic civilization that could destroy our entire homeworld without significant effort. Do you really think we'd approach this situation without extensive preparation? The images showed human military installations, technological development, and strategic planning on a scale that stunned the assembled representatives. Hidden lunar bases, asteroid mining operations, and defensive platforms scattered throughout the Sol system. We didn't just develop space travel, Chen explained. We militarized our entire solar system before we sent our first message to the Council. Every piece of debris larger than a shuttle has been cataloged and equipped with monitoring devices. Our defensive networks could detect and respond to threats from distances measured in light years. Counselor Vexhai's aquatic form darkened with alarm. You're describing a fortress system. We're describing a prepared system, Chen corrected. We hope to never use any of these capabilities, but we'd be foolish not to have them. The display shifted to show real-time data from the Sol system. Massive installations that had been hidden from Council sensors, weapons platforms that could threaten capital ships, and communication arrays capable of coordinating defenses across the entire system. This is why we approached the Council, Chen continued, not because we need your protection, but because we recognize that cooperation is preferable to conflict. We'd rather be allies than enemies. Ambassador Zethkar found his voice. Captain Chen, are you threatening the Council? Chen's expression returned to its previous calm state, but her answer carried implications that would reshape galactic politics. Ambassador Zethkar, we're not threatening anyone. We're simply being honest about our capabilities. You asked what humans could really do. This is what we do. We prepare for every possible scenario. We develop solutions for problems that don't exist yet. And we ensure our survival regardless of circumstances. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species, each trying to process the revelation that humanity had been watching and preparing for decades. But here's what should really concern you, Chen added, her voice dropping to the same whisper that had commanded attention during her first presentation. Everything I've shown you represents our defensive preparations, our preparations for contact with a peaceful galactic community. The implications of that statement settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. If these were their preparations for peaceful contact, what had they prepared for hostile contact? We came here hoping to join a council of civilized species working together for mutual benefit, Chen concluded. We still hope that's possible. But make no mistake, we'll survive regardless of your decision. The question you need to answer is whether you want us as allies or as neighbors who prefer to remain independent. The Silence that followed was broken only by the ambient sounds of life support systems and translation matrices. Finally, Supreme Counselor Thexamon spoke. The Council will recess for extended deliberation. Captain Chen, you and your delegation will remain available for further questioning. As the human delegation was escorted out, every council member understood that their galaxy had just become a far more complicated place. The question was no longer whether to admit humans to the Council. It was how to coexist with a species that had been preparing for galactic contact longer than most civilizations had known about their existence. The private meeting room deep within the Council Station's secure levels had never hosted such a diverse gathering of military commanders. General Vaxtar of the Cortharian Defense Force, Admiral Zephyros of the Trilarian Fleet, Marshal Quendar of the Ethereal Collective's Reality Guard, and a dozen other senior officers from across the galaxy sat around a curved table designed to accommodate their various environmental needs. They'd been analyzing human defensive capabilities for 6 hours, and the picture that emerged was unlike anything in their combined experience. The technological gap isn't as large as we initially believed, Admiral Zephyros reported, his aquatic form rippling with tension. Their weapon systems are sophisticated but not beyond our understanding. What's disturbing is their implementation strategy. General Vaxtar, a massive Cortharian whose species had evolved from apex predators, gestured to the holographic display showing Sol system defenses. They've turned their entire star system into a weapon. Not just defensive platforms. Everything serves a dual purpose. Their mining operations can be converted to mass drivers. Their communication satellites can jam enemy sensors. Their research stations can manufacture weapons. Marshal Quendar's crystalline form chimed with concern. More troubling is their redundancy planning. We've identified at least 7 independent command structures capable of coordinating system defense. Destroying their primary command wouldn't cripple their response capability. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Most species developed space-based defenses gradually, adding platforms and weapons as threats became apparent. Humans had designed their entire spacefaring infrastructure around the assumption that they would eventually face hostile contact. There's something else, Admiral Zephyros continued. Our intelligence analysis suggests these defensive preparations were completed before they sent their first diplomatic message to the Council. They've been ready for war since before making contact. A new voice entered the conversation through the secure communication array. Generals, this is Intelligence Coordinator Nexval. We've completed our analysis of human information gathering capabilities. The holographic display shifted to show communication intercept data spanning 8 decades. The humans weren't exaggerating about their surveillance abilities. They've been monitoring our communications since they achieved spaceflight, but their methods are unusual. General Vaxtar leaned forward. Define unusual. Most species develop faster-than-light communication before attempting interstellar contact. Humans developed interstellar surveillance without faster-than-light capability. They positioned monitoring equipment throughout their solar system and used gravitational lensing to amplify signals from across the galaxy. The display showed the network of listening posts, each positioned to take advantage of their star's gravitational field to focus distant transmissions. They've recorded and analyzed every major council session for the past 30 years. They know our political structures, our military capabilities, our trade relationships, and our internal conflicts better than many council members. Marshal Quendar's form flickered with rapid calculations. You're saying they've conducted intelligence operations against the entire galaxy without leaving their home system? Correct. And there's more. They've also been monitoring communications from non-council species, pirates, raiders, independent traders, exploration fleets. They have detailed information about civilizations we've never made contact with. The military leaders exchanged alarmed glances. The implications were staggering. Humans possessed intelligence about galactic affairs that surpassed the Council's own databases. Admiral Zephyros activated his communication node. Coordinator Nexval, what's your assessment of human military doctrine based on this intelligence gathering? That's what concerns us most, Admiral. Their defensive preparations suggest they've studied every military engagement in recorded galactic history. They've identified weaknesses in our tactics, equipment, and coordination methods. Their system defenses are specifically designed to counter known galactic military capabilities. General Vaxtar's predatory instincts kicked in. Are you suggesting they could defeat Council forces? I'm suggesting they've been preparing to defeat Council forces for decades, regardless of whether they ever expected to fight us. The room erupted in discussions across multiple species communication methods. When order was restored, Marshal Quendar asked the question that had been troubling everyone present. What are their offensive capabilities? Coordinator Nexaval paused before responding. Unknown. Everything we've observed focuses on defense and deterrence. But given their preparation levels and strategic thinking, we must assume they've developed offensive capabilities we haven't identified. Before anyone could respond, an emergency alert activated throughout the secure facility. Supreme Counselor Thexamon's harmonic voice reached every participant simultaneously. All senior staff report to emergency stations. We have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The military leaders quickly accessed the incoming data stream, and what they found validated their worst fears about human capabilities. A massive Devrak, Empire invasion fleet, over 300 warships, had been detected approaching the Council's outer territories. The Devraks were an aggressive species that had rejected Council membership centuries ago, choosing instead to build an empire through conquest. They'd been quiet for decades, but intelligence suggested they'd been building military strength for another expansion attempt. The invasion fleet is 3 days from Council space, reported Fleet, Admiral Gethamoran of the Council Defense. Of course, our response fleet can't intercept them before they reach the civilian colonies. General Vaxtar studied the tactical display. 300 ships. That's larger than anything the Devraks have fielded before. It gets worse, Admiral Gethamoran continued. Our intelligence indicates this is only the first wave. They've positioned additional fleets in reserve, suggesting they plan a sustained campaign to conquer multiple systems. The assembled officers began calculating response strategies, deployment times, and casualty estimates. None of the scenarios looked favorable. The Council's peacekeeping forces were designed for small-scale conflicts and piracy suppression, not large-scale warfare against a prepared enemy. As they worked, another communication channel activated. Captain Chen's voice filled the secure chamber. Council Military Command, this is Captain Sarah Chen. We've been monitoring your emergency communications. Are you dealing with the Devrak fleet movement? General Vaxtar responded immediately. Captain Chen, this is classified military information. How are you accessing our secure channels? General Vaxtar, we've been monitoring all communications for 80 years, remember? Your security protocols are adequate for most purposes, but we're not calling to discuss your cybersecurity. We're calling to offer assistance. Marshal Quendar's crystalline form resonated with suspicion. What kind of assistance can 3 human ships provide against a fleet of 300 Devrak warships? Chen's response carried that familiar tone of absolute certainty that had troubled Council members from their first encounter. Marshal Quendar, I think you're still misunderstanding the situation. Those 3 ships you've been monitoring? They're diplomatic vessels. Our actual military assets have been positioned throughout this region for the past 6 months. The tactical display suddenly updated with new sensor data. Dozens of previously undetected objects throughout local space revealed themselves as human military vessels. They'd been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, and in the sensor shadows of space stations. We've been tracking the Devrak buildup since it began, Chen continued. We don't typically interfere in galactic politics, but an invasion of this scale threatens regional stability. We're prepared to assist in preventing it. Admiral Zephyros found his voice first. Captain Chen, how many ships do you have in this region? Enough. The single-word answer contained implications that made every military officer in the chamber recalculate everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. We're transmitting tactical solutions to the invasion fleet problem, Chen added. You can implement our recommendations or develop your own response. But either way, the Devrak invasion won't succeed. As the human tactical data flooded their systems, the Council's military leaders realized they were witnessing the moment when humanity revealed itself as not just another spacefaring species, but as a galactic power that had been operating in the shadows for decades. The question was no longer whether humans deserved Council membership. The question was whether the Council was ready to coexist with a species that had been preparing for galactic warfare since before making first contact. The Council's emergency command center buzzed with activity. as military coordinators from dozens of species worked to implement the human tactical recommendations. The battle plans that appeared on their displays were unlike anything in their strategic databases. Complex, multi-layered operations that seemed to anticipate every possible Devrak response. Supreme Counselor Thexamon stood at the center of the command center, his massive crystalline form reflecting the lights from dozens of holographic displays. Around him, the galaxy's most experienced military minds struggled to understand warfare on a scale they'd never conceived. The human strategy is comprehensive, Admiral Zephyros reported, his aquatic form rippling with nervous energy. They've identified weaknesses in Devrak ship designs we never noticed. Their proposed attack vectors exploit blind spots in their sensor arrays. General Vaxtar manipulated the tactical display with his massive claws. More than that, they've calculated optimal targeting sequences to maximize psychological impact. This isn't just military strategy. It's psychological warfare designed to break Devrak morale. Captain Chen had been granted access to the command center, and she stood quietly observing the preparations with the same calm efficiency she'd maintained throughout their diplomatic mission. When Thexamon addressed her directly, his harmonic tones carried notes of grudging respect. Captain Chen, these tactical plans suggest intimate knowledge of Devrak military doctrine. How long have you been studying them? Approximately 40 years, Supreme Counselor. The Devraks represent the most significant potential threat to galactic stability in this region. We've been tracking their military development since we began monitoring galactic communications. Elder Morden, present despite his advanced age, leaned forward in his environmental pod. You've been planning for this specific conflict for 4 decades? We've been planning for multiple scenarios involving Devrak expansion, Chen corrected. This particular invasion pattern was identified as Probability Scenario 7 Alpha in our strategic projections. We've prepared responses for their 12 most likely expansion strategies. The casual mention of 40 years of strategic planning sent another wave of unease through the command center. Marshal Quendar's crystalline form chimed with concern. Captain Chen, are you saying humans have detailed battle plans for conflicts that may never occur? Marshal Quendar, we have detailed plans for most conflicts that might occur in this galactic region. It's what we do. Before anyone could respond to that disturbing revelation, the command center's long-range sensors detected new activity in the Devrak fleet. The invasion force had accelerated beyond their projected timeline and was approaching Council space faster than expected. Fleet Admiral, Getha Moran to all units, the Council's senior military commander announced. Devrak forces will reach the outer colonies in 18 hours, not 3 days. All available ships move to intercept coordinates. Chen activated her personal communication device. Human Fleet Command, this is Diplomatic 7. Devrak timeline has accelerated. Implement Scenario 7 Alpha emergency authorization. Confirmed, Diplomatic 7. Human fleet units are moving to engagement positions. The tactical display updated again, and this time the scope of human military presence became apparent. What the Council had assumed were a few dozen hidden ships were actually advanced scouts for a much larger force. Human vessels emerged from concealment throughout the region, not just single ships but organized battle groups with capabilities that matched the most advanced Council fleets. How many ships do you have? Supreme Counselor Thexamon asked, his harmonic tones carrying notes of awe and concern. In this region? Sufficient for current operations, Chen replied. Throughout the galaxy? We prefer not to discuss exact numbers. Admiral Zephyros manipulated the sensor display, trying to get accurate counts of human vessels. Captain Chen, our sensors are showing fleet movements that suggest you have more ships in local space than the entire Council Defense Force. Your sensors are probably correct. Admiral, the simple confirmation sent shockwaves through the assembled military leadership. The Council Defense Force represented the combined military might of 47 spacefaring civilizations built up over centuries. The idea that a single species, one that had achieved spaceflight only recently, could field comparable forces challenged every assumption about galactic military balance. General Vaxtar, his predatory instincts fully engaged, asked the question that had been building in everyone's minds. Captain Chen, if humans possess this level of military capability, why do you need Council membership? For the first time since entering the command center, Chen smiled. It wasn't the diplomatic expression she'd worn during formal presentations. This was something sharper, more genuine and infinitely more unsettling. General Vaxtar, we don't need Council membership for protection or resources. We're completely self-sufficient. We want Council membership because we believe in the principles the Council represents: cooperation, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and mutual benefit through shared knowledge. She gestured to the tactical displays showing the approaching Devrak fleet. But we also believe those principles are worth defending. The Devraks represent everything the Council stands against: conquest through force, subjugation of weaker species, and expansion through destruction. The display shifted to show detailed intelligence about Devrak society and military doctrine. We've studied their empire extensively. They've enslaved or destroyed 17 civilizations in the past 2 centuries. They view all other species as either resources to exploit or obstacles to eliminate. Chen's expression hardened. We've decided that's unacceptable. Elder Morden's ancient voice carried a tremor of understanding. You're not just defending the Council's colonies. You're eliminating the Devrak Empire as a threat. Elder Morden, the Devraks had a choice. They could have pursued peaceful coexistence like everyone else in this region. They chose aggression. We're simply responding to their choice. The communication array crackled with reports from the forward monitoring stations. The Devrak invasion fleet had reached the edge of Council space and was beginning to deploy for attack formations. 300 of the most advanced warships in their empire, equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Council fleet units are moving to intercept, Fleet Admiral Gethmorn reported. Estimated time to engagement, 4 hours. Chen checked her personal device again. Human units are in position. Recommend Council forces maintain defensive postures and observe. General Vaxtar activated his communication node. Captain Chen, our intelligence suggests the Devrak fleet could defeat our combined forces. Are you certain human units can handle an enemy of this magnitude? Chen's answer would echo through galactic military academies for generations to come. General Vaxtar, I think there's still a fundamental misunderstanding about human military doctrine. We didn't spend 40 years studying the Devraks so we could fight them on equal terms. We studied them so we could end them as quickly and efficiently as possible. The tactical display updated one final time, showing the true scope of human fleet movements. Battle groups were emerging from concealment throughout the region, moving with precision that suggested not just advanced coordination, but absolute certainty about the outcome. The Devrak Empire has existed for over 600 years, Chen continued. They've conquered 17 civilizations and threatened dozens more. They've had a good run. It ends today. As reports flooded in from monitoring stations throughout the region, the Council's leadership realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a military engagement, but the systematic dismantling of an interstellar empire by a species most of them had never heard of a week earlier. The universe was about to see what humans were truly capable of when they decided something was unacceptable. The engagement began at exactly 14:32 Galactic Standard Time, and it lasted 17 minutes. In the Council's Emergency Command Center, dozens of military analysts watched their displays in stunned silence as the most sophisticated invasion fleet in Devrak history was systematically dismantled by human forces operating with surgical precision. Phase 1 complete, came the report from Human Fleet Command. Devrak communication and sensor networks disabled. They're operating blind. Admiral Zephyros stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How did they jam an entire fleet's communication simultaneously? That's impossible with conventional jamming technology. Captain Chen, monitoring the engagement from her position near the command center's primary display, answered without taking her eyes off the battle data. We didn't jam their communications, Admiral. We took control of them. The implications of that statement sent ripples of shock through the assembled Council representatives. General Vaxtar leaned forward, his massive form tense with anticipation. You're conducting electronic warfare against their entire fleet? We've been inside their communication networks for years, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Every transmission, every tactical update, every command protocol. We know their systems better than they do. On the tactical display, human vessels moved through the Devrak formation like predators among prey. They didn't engage in the traditional ship-to-ship combat the Council expected. Instead, they executed precise strikes against specific systems, engines, weapons, life support, leaving Devrak vessels intact but completely helpless. Phase 2 complete, the human fleet commander reported. Devrak offensive capabilities neutralized. Beginning selective capture operations. Marshal Quendar's crystalline form resonated with confusion. Capture operations? Why are they taking prisoners instead of destroying the fleet? Chen finally turned from the display to address the assembled council members. Because we're not here to commit genocide, Marshal. We're here to end a threat. The Devrak Empire is finished, but that doesn't mean every Devrak needs to die. Supreme Counselor Thexamon's harmonic tones carried notes of deep concern. Captain Chen, what exactly are your forces doing to those ships? We're conducting what we call regime change, Supreme Counselor. The Devrak military hierarchy that ordered this invasion is being removed from command. Moderate Devrak political leaders who oppose the expansion are being contacted and offered alternatives to continued warfare. The tactical display showed human boarding, parties moving through disabled Devrak vessels with mechanical efficiency. But instead of the brutal combat everyone expected, they were conducting what appeared to be selective arrests of specific individuals. How do you know which Devraks to arrest and which to spare? Elder Morden asked, his ancient voice trembling with the implications of what he was witnessing. We've been monitoring their internal communications for decades, Chen explained. We know which military commanders authorized attacks on civilian populations. We know which political leaders profited from slave labor. We know which industrialists manufactured weapons specifically for planetary bombardment. She gestured to the ongoing operations. We also know which Devraks opposed these policies, which ones tried to reform their government, and which ones have been working underground to help enslaved populations escape. Admiral Zephyros found his voice. You're conducting a selective purge of the Devrak leadership based on 40 years of intelligence gathering? We're conducting justice based on 40 years of evidence gathering, Chen corrected. Every Devrak leader being arrested today has committed acts that would be considered war crimes under galactic law. The ones we're leaving in place have clean records. The efficiency of the operation was staggering. Human forces had identified and neutralized every significant military asset in the Devrak fleet, while simultaneously conducting precision arrests of specific individuals across hundreds of ships. It wasn't warfare in any sense the Council understood. It was law enforcement on an interstellar scale. Phase 3 complete. Came another report from Human Fleet Command. Primary invasion fleet neutralized. Beginning operations against reserve fleets. General Vaxtar activated his communication array. Reserve fleets? We only detected one Devrak fleet. General, the invasion fleet you detected was their opening gambit, Chen explained. They have 7 additional fleets positioned throughout their empire, ready to reinforce the invasion or defend their core worlds. We're dealing with all of them simultaneously. The tactical display expanded to show the entire Devrak empire, and the scope of human operations became apparent. While the Council had focused on the single invasion fleet, human forces had been engaging Devrak military assets across dozens of star systems. This is impossible, Marshal Quendar whispered, her crystalline form flickering with rapid calculations. You're conducting simultaneous operations across an area spanning hundreds of light years. The coordination requirements alone are within acceptable parameters for our fleet command systems, Chen finished. We've been planning this operation for 40 years. Every contingency has been accounted for. The reports continued flooding in from across Devrak space. Military bases disabled, slave labor camps liberated, weapons manufacturing facilities shut down, and political prisoners released. But through it all, casualty reports remained remarkably low. Human Fleet Command to Council Monitoring Station. Came a new transmission. Operation Sundown is proceeding ahead of schedule. Devrak military capability has been reduced by 93% across all theaters. Civilian casualties remain within projected minimums. Supreme Counselor Thexamon's harmonic voice carried notes of awe and terror. Captain Chen, you've effectively conquered an entire interstellar empire in less than one standard day. Conquered is the wrong word, Supreme Counselor, Chen replied. We've dismantled a militaristic government and are facilitating the establishment of a democratic alternative. The Devrak people aren't our enemies. Their leadership was. Elder Morden leaned forward in his pod. What happens to the Devrak Empire now? There is no Devrak Empire now, Chen said simply. There are 17 newly independent worlds that were previously conquered by the Devraks, and there are Devrak worlds that are transitioning to representative government. We've provided them with Constitutional frameworks based on successful democratic models from across the galaxy. The casual mention of constitutional frameworks prepared in advance sent another wave of unease through the command center. The depth of human preparation for this operation was becoming increasingly apparent. The enslaved populations have been freed and are being relocated to their homeworlds or to sanctuary planets of their choosing, Chen continued. Reparations for war crimes are being extracted from Devrak industrial assets and distributed to victim populations. The transition should be complete within 6 months. Admiral Zephyros stared at the tactical display showing the systematic transformation of an entire region of space. Captain Chen, the level of planning and coordination required for this operation. How long have you been preparing for it? Chen checked her personal device one final time before answering. Admiral, we've been preparing for operations like this since before we made first contact with the Council. Not specifically against the Devraks, but against any regime that threatens galactic stability through conquest and oppression. She looked around the command center at the assembled representatives from dozens of civilizations, all trying to process what they'd witnessed. The universe is a dangerous place, Chen said quietly. There will always be species that choose aggression over cooperation. The Council represents the best hope for peaceful coexistence, but peace requires strength to defend it. Supreme Counselor Thexaman asked the question that had been building throughout the engagement. Captain Chen, how many other operations like this have you conducted? Chen's answer would reshape galactic politics for the next millennium. This is the first time we've acted openly. But the Devraks weren't the only aggressive empire in this region of space. Over the past 20 years, we've quietly dismantled 6 other regimes that pose threats to galactic stability. The Council never knew about them because by the time we finished, they'd simply faded away. The silence that followed was broken only by the ambient sounds of the command center's systems. Finally, Chen spoke again. Honored Council members, we still want to join your organization, but I think it's time we were completely honest about why. The final council session convened 3 days after the Devrak Empire ceased to exist. The chamber that had once buzzed with routine diplomatic discussions now hummed with tension as representatives from 47 civilizations gathered to address a question that would define galactic politics for generations to come. Captain, Chen stood once again at the central speaking platform, but the dynamics had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer a representative of a minor species seeking admission to an established order. She was the voice of a civilization that had revealed itself as the galaxy's dominant military power, one that had been operating in the shadows for decades. Supreme Counselor Thexaman called the session to order, his massive crystalline form reflecting the nervous energy that filled the chamber. We are here to conclude the human application for council membership, and to address the broader implications of recent revelations about human capabilities and activities. The holographic display above the speaking platform showed real-time reports from former Devrak space. 17 liberated worlds were establishing democratic governments with human advisors. Former slave populations were being relocated to new homes with human-provided transportation. War criminals were being processed through human-established tribunals using galactic legal precedents. Captain Chen, Thexaman continued, you stated that you wished to be completely honest about human motivations for seeking council membership. The floor is yours. Chen nodded and activated her personal display system. Images of Earth appeared above the platform. Not the serene blue marble that had been shown before, but a world covered with massive defensive installations, orbital platforms, and the infrastructure of a civilization perpetually prepared for war. Honored council members, we've been less than completely forthright about our situation, Chen began. We told you we developed spaceflight and defensive capabilities because of our isolation and vulnerability. That was true but incomplete. The images shifted to show human expansion beyond Earth. Not just the Sol system defenses they'd revealed earlier, but colonies, outposts, and installations scattered across dozens of star systems. The truth is that we've been expanding into the galaxy for over a century. We currently maintain permanent populations in 47 star systems, with exploratory missions reaching into regions that the Council has never surveyed. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the chamber. Ambassador Zethkar activated his communication node. Captain Chen, are you saying humans have established an interstellar empire without the Council's knowledge? We've established what we call the Human Colonial Network, Chen corrected.
Not an empire, we don't conquer or subjugate.
We explore, we settle uninhabited worlds, and we establish research stations in strategic locations. Every human colony is self-governing and voluntary. Elder Morden leaned forward in his environmental pod. Captain Chen, the implications of secret human expansion across council space. We haven't expanded into council space, Chen interrupted. We've expanded into unclaimed space, following galactic law regarding territorial rights. Every system we've settled was uninhabited and unclaimed by any council member. The display showed the scope of human presence across the galaxy, colonies, research stations, monitoring posts, and defensive installations positioned throughout the spiral arm. It was a network that rivaled the council's own territorial holdings. But why maintain secrecy? Asked Councillor Vexhai, his aquatic form rippling with agitation. Why hide your true expansion if it's legal? Chen's expression grew somber. Because we've been protecting you. The simple statement created a moment of stunned silence. Finally, Supreme Councillor Thexamon asked, protecting us from what? From the truth about what's out there, Chen replied. The galaxy is much more dangerous than the Council realizes. Beyond the civilized regions you know about, there are threats that would terrify even the most aggressive Council species. The display shifted to show sensor data from human deep space monitoring stations. Massive unidentified objects moving through the void between galaxies. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Extinct civilizations whose worlds showed signs of destruction. On scales that defied comprehension, we've encountered evidence of at least 3 different species or entities that pose existential threats to galactic civilization, Chen continued. Ancient machines that consume entire star systems for raw materials. Energy beings that treat matter-based life as a curiosity to be studied and preserved in museums. And something else that we haven't been able to identify, but which has left entire sectors of space completely devoid of life. Admiral Zephyros found his voice first. Why haven't you reported these threats to the Council? Because the Council isn't equipped to deal with them, Chen answered bluntly. Your military forces are designed for peacekeeping and small-scale conflicts. Your exploration fleets avoid dangerous regions. Your scientific institutions study known phenomena within safe parameters. She gestured to the ongoing reports from former Devrek space. The Devrek Empire represented a minor regional threat that we eliminated in 17 minutes. The entities we're monitoring in deep space could end galactic civilization in 17 seconds. Marshal Quendar's crystalline form resonated with deep concern. You're suggesting humans have taken responsibility for defending the galaxy against unknown threats? We're suggesting that someone needs to take that responsibility, Chen replied. For the past century that someone has been us. We've established monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, not to spy on council members, but to watch for threats coming from outside known space. The display showed the full scope of human monitoring networks, sensor arrays positioned at the galaxy's edge, research stations studying extinct civilizations, and rapid response fleets stationed in strategic locations throughout the spiral arm. We've intercepted and neutralized 17 different incursions by hostile entities over the past 50 years, Chen continued. Ancient probe ships, reality-distorting energy phenomena, and automated systems left behind by extinct civilizations. The Council never knew about them, because we dealt with them before they could threaten inhabited space. General Vaxtar activated his communication array. Captain Chen, you're describing a shadow war being fought for the entire galaxy. We're describing necessary preparations for an uncertain universe, Chen corrected. But it's why we want Council membership. We can't protect galactic civilization alone indefinitely. We need partners, allies, and shared resources to address the threats we're monitoring. Supreme Councillor Thexamon's harmonic tones carried notes of deep contemplation. What exactly are you proposing? Chen's answer would reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity's place in the universe. We're proposing that the Council evolve beyond its current role as a diplomatic and trade organization. We're offering to share our defensive technologies, our intelligence networks, and our military capabilities with species that are willing to take responsibility for galactic security. The display showed potential integration plans, Council fleets enhanced with human technology, joint monitoring stations, shared research facilities, and coordinated defense networks spanning the entire galaxy. But we're also making it clear that this offer comes with conditions, Chen continued. Species that join this expanded security network will need to meet higher standards for military capability, technological development, and commitment to defending not just their own territories, but galactic civilization as a whole. Elder Mordoon's ancient voice carried a tremor of understanding. You're not asking to join the Council. You're asking the Council to join you, Chen smiled. And for the first time since their arrival, it was a genuinely warm expression without hidden implications. Elder Morden, we're asking the Council to become what it has the potential to be. Not just a forum for peaceful species to coordinate trade and resolve disputes, but a true galactic community capable of defending itself against any threat the universe can produce. She looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of civilizations, all trying to process the choice before them. The universe has seen what humans are capable of when something threatens the principles we believe in, Chen concluded. Now it's time to decide whether those principles are worth defending together. The vote that followed would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization chose to face an uncertain universe with united strength rather than divided hope. When the final tally was announced, 46 species had voted to accept humanity's proposal for an expanded council with shared responsibility for galactic defense. Only one species voted against the proposal, a minor civilization that preferred isolation to the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. 3 days later, that species' homeworld was destroyed by an automated probe from an extinct civilization. The probe was intercepted and neutralized by a joint human council fleet before it could move on to its next target. The galaxy had learned that in an infinite universe filled with unknown dangers, there was wisdom in having neighbors who were prepared for anything, no matter how terrible, and strong enough to face it without flinching. The age of humanity standing alone as galactic guardians was over. The age of unified galactic defense had begun.